Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Senegal's opposition candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye has been declared winner of the country's presidential election held on March 24. The Constitutional Council said Faye won more than 54% of votes in the election, and that the provisional results were based on vote tallies from 100% of polling stations. Therefore, this week, on April 2nd to be exact, Bassirou Diomaye Faye will be inaugurated as the country's 5th president. Faye was a former tax inspector who is also General Secretary of the Band African Patriots of Senegal for Work, Ethics and Fraternity, PASTEF for short. He won the presidential election in place of disqualified candidate Ousmane Sonko, who was also arrested, being accused of repeated rape by a massage parlor employee. PASTEF endorsed Faye in November 2023 as its candidate for the 2024 presidential election, despite his arrest in Dakar over charges of spreading false news and defamation of a constituted body. Faye had made a post on Facebook alleging that the administration of outgoing President Macky Sall was trampling on the judicial rights of his citizens, citing the then ongoing saga of opposition figure Ousmane Sonko. On March 15, a day after he was released from jail, he gathered hundreds of supporters at his first public appearance as presidential contender. Former President Abdoulaye Wade and his Senegalese Democratic Party endorsed Faye on the same day in a boost to his chances of winning the election. A move came after the Senegalese Democratic Party, the PDS candidate Karim Wade, was disqualified from contesting the race because he was a dual citizen at the time that he submitted his candidacy. Faye has said he believes in system change and left-wing Pan-Africanism to reclaim Senegal's sovereignty, a rhetoric some analysts believe is an allusion to intentions to distance the country from Western powers, especially former colonial rule France. He's also vowed to fight French economic stranglehold over Senegal if elected. On Thursday, the president-elect was received by incumbent President Macky Sall at the presidential palace in Dakar alongside his mentor Ousmane Sonko. Joining me now is President, Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria, and former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and you were one of the, in fact, I think you were the topmost person I called when this whole Senegal issue came up. President Macky Sall refusing to leave office, announcing that he was going to postpone the elections up until December, and you know, the whole crisis that came out of that. Now there is a new leader of Senegal. He has not been sworn in yet, but he will be in the next few days. Bassirou Diomaye Faye has been confirmed by the Constitutional Council as the winner of the March 24 elections. He's just really young, 44 years old. I mean,
I think the youngest we've had so far.
Yes, if you're considering democratically elected
presidents. True.
Yes, we're not considering the guy in Burkina Faso who's leader of a military junta. What kind of leader do you think that he will be? Because this is a person who said that, and if I'm referring to my notes here, he's vowed to fight French economic stranglehold over Senegal. He's also said that he would change. He believes in system change and left-wing Pan-Africanism to reclaim Senegal's sovereignty. Why is that in dispute?
Well, you know, for many years, the French have been reluctant to let their former colonies go completely. If you make a comparison, for example, between Nigeria and some of these Francophone countries like Ivory Coast in particular and Senegal, the British who left Nigeria many years ago would not recognize this country as ever been under British rule. So many things have changed, particularly here in Lagos. But when you go to Ivory Coast or to, you know, almost so many of the streets are still named after colonial officers or, you know, colonial kings and things like that. So they've been rather, just like we also do here, the direction of travels, for example, in Senegal, in the Francophone country, is Paris, while ours is, but we seem to have reduced our connection. You can travel around this country and you will not believe that a British ever lived here. For example, I'm not too sure. A couple of years ago, there were in the 60s, 70s, and some parts of 80s. There were a whole lot of British companies here in Nigeria, for example. Today, you can hardly find any British company, maybe some subsidiaries. It's not the same thing like in, Senegal or like in France. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the French, they have a dominant role, simply a dominant role in some of these Francophone countries. And gradually, these countries are beginning to revolt, quote unquote, against French intense, intervention in their affairs. And I think this election is probably part of that protest. The coups that have taken place, look at everywhere coups have taken place in the last couple of years in West Africa. There have been protests against the French presence in all these countries. So I think what the young president is saying is that they are probably going to do this more systematically than the rest are trying to do. But I would believe that it would be an engagement. They will still engage the French to find out, to see how far they can go, because I'm not too sure it's going to be too revolutionary. Right. But I think it's going to be a gradual process of trying to disconnect from France completely.
Yeah, and I think that France is actually hoping that change will be gradual. President Macron did send his congratulatory message to Mr. Faye. It is a bit awkward, I would say, for France to be congratulating Senegal, considering that all these other countries, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, have all, announced severing of ties, with France. What could it look like for Senegal if that ever happened?
Well, look, number one, it will be a gradual process. Number two, I think the new president and his team will be very careful in, jumping off the boat very quickly. They will first be assure themselves that they have the wherewithal to be able to exist without French interference or without the assistance of France. But I've always argued that, look, 60 years after the independence of African countries, we shouldn't be looking completely helpless without some of these countries if we had done the right thing, not just in this country, but in a number of other countries. So let me just say that I want to believe that this is probably the process of trying to reclaim power from the colonial master and utilizing that power for the benefit of the people of Senegal. So my best bet or hope is that it will be a gradual process in which they would take the best of what they can from the French and discard what they simply don't need, like French interfering in their policies, in the policies they want to enunciate. But the most important thing right now is for him to ensure that they can build up the economy. At the end of the day, it is the economy, Once they can build up the economy and they can become productive, like we talk about other African countries, I think the French would themselves understand that it is time to let a number of these countries, operate and enjoy their independence. But the monetary side, they also have to work out. And I think that's one of the areas that they're going to focus on.
So once again, Senegal is an example of what a democratic system should look like. Oh. The way the elections have been conducted.
No,
despite the crisis.
They've never had a coup in that country. They have always insisted that their president serve their term and leave. And those who have refused to leave, they found a way to get them out. And that's exactly what they've done again. They did that to before even I'm trying to remember the name of the president that succeeded Senegal. They also more or less forced him to leave. Then word came, and then he too was reluctant to go. He had to go. And by the way, Maxale was also the beneficiary of that protest, to get Wahid out of the place. And now he came at the end of his tenure, started playing games, and again they forced him out.
And the forcing out was actually legal. I mean, it wasn't like people took up arms. It was protests on the street.
It was protest by the people.
Yeah.
The courts intervened, and they came up with the correct rulings that, look, you guys, you must play by the rules. Very simple, not complicated.
So maybe the problem with African countries is, institutions. Strong institutions, because at the end of the day, that's what saved Senegal.
At the end of the day, I've always said two things are wrong with us in this part of the world: leadership and the weakness of our institutions. But the weakness of our institutions also has to do with the weakness of the leaders in those institutions, because they look at it that their allegiance is to the leader they want to protect. Not because they love that leader so much, no, because they also are beneficiary of the confusion. once there's confusion, or once the president is allowed to stay on, and if they campaign for him to stay on, everybody stays on. But in the case of Senegal, everybody was determined, the people were determined to ensure that the constitution plays, that people uphold the constitution. The constitutional courts, the courts were interested in ensuring that they gave the correct rulings and compelled the president and his team to allow the democratic process to to conclude with the election as originally planned.
Yeah.
I think it's a lesson for, not just for the Senegalese people as much as we commend them, but a lesson for all of us.
Yeah, but then how do African countries begin to make the necessary changes inside? I mean, you have these institutions that have existed for so long, and the corruption and rot in the system has existed for so long. How do you clear that up to get to the point where you can claim that you are Senegal standard?
We have to fight for it. Listen, virtually everything we have today in terms of democratic dividends around the world, it was never given on a platter of gold. People fought for it. People fought for it, just like, we fought for independence in this part of the world. The Americans fought for their own independence. And when you look at their trajectory, virtually everything they enjoy today, somewhere along the line, they fought for it. They went to court, and the courts ruled one way or the other, and that helped establish the democratic process. The problem we have in some African countries, including us, is that, over time, our people have, I don't know whether to say how the politicians, in particular in this country, have really destroyed the people's belief in democracy, the way they're doing things. When you look at the cases of corruption, from the Senate, from the House in this country in the last couple of weeks, and we are all just continuing as if it's business as usual. Nobody is raising an alarm. Only some NGOs are making noise about it, and everybody just goes on. Nobody says, look, let's be honest with ourselves. We need to find out exactly, was the budget, this budget and last budgets, have they been padded? And if so, some of the allegations, are they true? Nobody is doing any investigation. But the point is that the people need to wake up and fight for the survival of their democracy. The people need to discard the division created by politicians, who use religion, who use ethnicity, who use, so many other things to divide people. Because at the end of the day, the same politicians don't care for religion, they don't care for tribe, they just care for power.
But I think that's also what worked for Senegal. The fact that the leaders couldn't use religion against the people because there's just one religion that really
Exactly.
governs the
There's
whole
just
country.
one religion, and to a large extent, they're almost same tribe with little. But the truth of the matter is that, look, the people of this country need to find a way to take back this country and take back their democracy. Period. There's no other way. They have to fight for it. If they fight to get things done, they will. But if they continue to allow politicians to deceive them, to break them, to divide them, well, there's nothing. We continue to go the way we are going to. And again, it's a lesson for Nigerian youths. When you look at what happened in Senegal, I remember a couple of years ago when the current president of France was elected. I think it was 30 something. Am I right? 39.
Yeah, I think so.
It was 39 all over this country. Oh, look, you must give the youths a chance. You must do this. Look, for goodness sake, I've always told youths, nobody gives anybody a chance. And this guy in Senegal has proven that nobody gives anybody a chance. You have to fight for it.
Ambassador Keshi, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I'm going to shake your hand because this is post-COVID finally. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you too.
Thanks.
Foreign ministers and staff of Russia diplomatic missions, international organizations, and the Russian Foreign Ministry have attended a flower-laying ceremony at a spontaneous memorial near Moscow's Crocus City Hall over the weekend. The diplomats, including U.S. Ambassador to Russia Lynn Tracy, Nicaraguan Ambassador Alba Torres, and Chinese Defense Attaché to Russia Kui Yanwei, paid tribute to the victims of the terrorist attack with a minute's silence and later released white balloons into the air. The Russian Foreign Ministry's press service reported that about 250 representatives of more than 130 diplomatic missions took part in the event. Over 143 people were reportedly killed in the attack that happened on Crocus City Hall on Friday, March 22nd. President Vladimir Putin has blamed the attack on who he calls radical Islamists, but has blamed the US for trying through various channels to convince its satellites and other countries of the world that, according to its intelligence, there is allegedly no trace of Kiev in the Moscow terrorist attack. Back in Nigeria, the former Minister of Aviation Femi Fani-Kayode led some former top government officials, including former Minister of Communications and Digital Economy Professor Issa Pantami, on a condolence visit to the Embassy of Russia in Abuja. Speaking during the visit, the former aviation minister said Nigeria has suffered from similar issues in recent past and has come to commiserate with Russia on behalf of millions of Nigerians. He acknowledged the critical role that Russia has played in the development of Nigeria, assuring them the country will not stand alone at this critical time. The ambassador of Russia to Nigeria, Alexei Shebashin, while thanking the delegation for the visit, called for combined efforts to defeat terrorists.
As you can see, the people that came here today are not just ordinary people. These are people that of high caliber, and they represent millions of others. And we felt it was appropriate to come and express our solidarity with you. We believe strongly that those that were behind this, those we know already, that the Russian security services have so quickly brought to book and have caught, outside of those ones that have been caught, we believe strongly that it is important, and we have every faith in your system, that you will get to the bottom of it and know those that were really behind it. So it's not just those that you see that you have to administer some kind of response to and bring to justice, but even those that were behind it, we need to identify them, and we need to fight them, we need to oppose them, and in that quest, in that advocacy of that position, We stand with you 100%.
4 of them who were actually doing the firing were arrested near the Ukrainian border in Bryansk region. Mr. Putin personally leads the investigation. So far there is no conclusive information. When it comes, we will certainly let you know. But I'm more than sure that there will be no reprieve, no pardon given to these people who has killed 140 children including, and the same figure, 140 are wounded, lying in hospitals. That is terrible.
Leader of Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad, Zia al-Nakhala, has thanked Iran for its support and vowed to win against Israel in Gaza. This followed a meeting with Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdullahian in Tehran on Saturday. Both men shook hands outside the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs before sitting down for talks alongside their respective delegations. While Iran is not involved directly in the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, it is known to actively support Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and other militant groups in what it's described as the axis of resistance. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says reasonable views of Russia have not been taken on board. Spokesperson Lin Jian was responding to a question about Moscow's veto of UN monitoring of North Korea's compliance with sanctions during a briefing in Beijing on Friday. Mr. Lin said the Chinese side has fully elaborated our position in the explanation of votes at the Security Council. I would like to stress again that our reasonable views of Russia have not been taken on board. Amid continued tensions on the Korean Peninsula, blindly imposing sanctions and pressure will not solve the problem. Political settlement is the only viable way out. We hope the Security Council and relevant parties will make constructive efforts to this end.
世界上只有一个中国，台湾是中国领土不可分割的一部分。
The UN panel had stated that it was investigating arms transfers, while the US, South Korea, and others have accused Pyongyang of supplying arms to Moscow, which both North Korea and Russia have strongly denied.
恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定。
This is where we end the program this week. I hope it's been worth your time. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.